Hello and welcome to Tools to Create a Better Life with myself, Glenyce Hughes. I am so grateful you are here. Now, if you're listening to this and not watching it, I am sitting outside at the Jasper Park Lodge in Jasper, Alberta, Canada. So you might hear loons, you might hear helicopters, you might hear joggers go by, who knows, but I just had to come and do this week's show right by the lake. Oh my gosh. And I'll be honest, part of the reason I had to come do it by the lake was because I literally just sat down to do it in our yard, as we might call it at our cabin, and the sprinkler came on and it got me wet. So, and then it really soaked my chair. Once I moved, anyway. So here I am down by the lake, which is even prettier. Oh my goodness. How does it get any more beautiful than this place? Wow, wow, wow. So let's talk about some tools for when things don't go as planned. And this show is inspired by our trip here on Tuesday. We drove down. It's usually a 3.5 to 4 hour drive. And on Tuesday, it took us 8 hours. Yes. So for the first 45 minutes, we didn't really know what was going on. We just came to a stop, as did everybody in front of us, and of course, everybody behind us. And so we just sat for 45 minutes, and because we were just kind of started to get closer to Jasper and the mountains, it's a single lane highway. And so we could have turned around and went back to the nearest town. That didn't feel so light. So we just waited. And we moved a little bit, and when we moved that little bit, then I could actually get a little bit of cell phone reception and found out there was an accident ahead. And they had actually closed the road behind us. So we were one of them that got through. So we sat pretty much for 4 hours just on the highway, the hottest day of the summer so far, probably going to be of the summer actually. And I was sitting in my car on a highway. And so that's how this show was inspired, because I started using some tools. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't start right away. I wasn't my best self for about 15 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer. And then I chose to use some tools. And one of the tools that I chose, I would have to say, is something that I have really only been starting this year, or I shouldn't say only starting this year, but really cognitively choosing it this year. And it was, sorry, there's some mosquitoes out here. It was a level of presence, like being present with what was. Because in the past I would have probably used a tool, but it would have been almost a deflection, like, well, what's right about this I'm not getting? And I maybe wouldn't have been like that. I wouldn't have said it like that, but the energy would have been like that. Like it's like a deflection or a reaction to it. And it was this time I chose not that. Now I still use the tool, what's right about this I'm not getting, because that is a brilliant tool in those sorts of situations. But it was truly from a level of presence and spaciousness of like, what is right about this I'm not getting? And I wasn't looking for an answer. I wasn't looking for what was right about it. I was actually just truly in that spaciousness, in that expansiveness of like, yeah, so what is right about this I'm not getting? And so as we sat and as the time progressed, all we could find online basically said, and nobody could have told us otherwise, was that they didn't know how many hours traffic would be stopped. And so do we turn around? Do we go home? What do we do? So I was asking questions about it, and it was, even go back to the town we went through. I don't know if we were maybe 10, 15 kilometers from that town. And that was all heavy. It was really heavy to not, like, it was light to sit there, I guess is what it was. And continued to be, because I kept asking, because I was like, okay, this could be forever. No, okay, not forever, but it would like, a long time. And we had big plans for when we got here. We actually left our house earlier so that we could have more time here on Tuesday during the day. So, just kind of sitting there and asking, and then, if I got it was light to stay, so then we stayed. And finally I got to the point where it's like, okay, what are my other choices here? Because I mean, turn around, go back to the town we were at, turn around, go home. But what does that look like? So we had rented this beautiful cabin here, and so do we get to come back another time? Do we lose our reservation? What does that look like? So I said to hubby, I'm gonna just text we have butlers here. How does it get any better than that? These cabins come with butlers. And so we just had been texting back and forth. So I was texting them to find out what occurs if we don't make it. Now, of course, they would have been well aware of the accident and the hours and all of that. So I was just in the process of writing the text, and we started to move. So that was interesting too, because it was like, okay, cool, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so that's one tool that two tools in that actually. The being present with what is. The other thing was I didn't make myself wrong for being pissy about it. And that's something that I would say I've done too much of in my lifetime. And one of the reasons for that, not that there needs to be a reason, of course, but one of the pieces of that is that I in the past, I've had a very strong idea of what I should be like. I have tools, so I should be able to handle anything. I'm an adult, so I shouldn't have a temper tantrum when I don't get my way. Like all of these kind of different shoulds, which is all just judgment. That's all it is. So I was in allowance of me with pissy, which interestingly enough allowed me to not be that pissy. It sounds so funny, but I mean, I wasn't thrilled with it, but I also wasn't like, what I would have been in the past would have been like, okay, we just need to go. Like I would have just got, I would have not asked questions. It just would have been straight to, no, we're going, turn around, let's go, we're going home. And then, been pissy that it didn't happen, and been pissy that who knows what would have happened with our reservation, like all the things. Instead, it was just like, okay, yeah, I'm pissy, I don't like this, and okay. So, the level of presence with it, the level of no judgment, the level of allowance, and then truly being the question of what is right about this I'm not getting. And with that, not looking for an answer. And so here's the thing that I find I would have done again in the past, or that I hear a lot of people do, is we look for those reasons and justifications. So would have done the, oh my gosh, if I wouldn't have stopped at the 3 times to use the washroom on the way, if hubby wouldn't have stopped to do the geocache, oh my gosh, we would have been in the accident, so phew, this saved at, like all the things. It's like, no, because that's just adding a bunch of story and invention to something that's not relevant. What do I know for sure? We didn't choose to be in that accident, physically in that accident. We chose, though, to be on the highway for almost 4 hours. Cool, interesting choice. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just a choice. So if we acknowledge that, then there's no story, there's no invention, there's no right, there's no wrong. And then there's just, again, the awareness of it. So then when we started to move and we were able to, to get here and all of that, and it was, it was still like, okay, so we didn't get to where I wanted to go was Edith Cavell Mountain. That was our plan for Tuesday. And like, okay, so we didn't get to go there. All right, so we came to the cabin here, we checked in, we got our stuff, and we went out. We must have went down, I think we walked actually around a little bit here, and then we went downtown into Jasper and had supper and stuff. And even driving in, like once we got through and driving in, it was just like I melted. Like it was just like, oh, as we got closer to the mountains, and there was lakes and rivers everywhere, and it was just incredible, the beauty that it just melted. So even by the time we got here, it's just like, ah. And as we drove by the accident, there was still two of the vehicles. I believe there was 3 vehicles involved, but there was 2 of them that were still in the ditch. And that was, that was also something to just be present with, and not to be in judgment of, or not to be in the trauma drama of it either. Just truly be in that space of, okay, so that there's that, and to just be present with it, and to not add to the story of it. And I knew from what I had read on the internet that there had been a death, and also to be present with that, and not be in the story, and not add to the trauma drama of it. Just to be present. Just to be present. And if you guys haven't listened to my radio show, I did a radio show in February, or maybe it was early March, about being present with grief. So when we had to, but we chose to put our sweet kitty Gromit down, as he was very sick. And that was really, the tool that I utilized the most throughout that was the willingness to be present with it. And that is such a gift. Because often what we do is we add the stories, so to drive by the accident and see the vehicles and all of that, and then the story of, oh, poor them, or oh, that's horrible, or how tragic, or well, somebody did something wrong and they shouldn't have done that, and this wouldn't have happened, like all the things, instead of just be present with it. And no story, because without story, there's space. Without story, there's awareness. With story, there's no space, and there's certainly no awareness. And so you want to watch that, even in the, smallest pieces of your life, or the most insignificant pieces of your life. If there's something that's not changing, or if there's something you would like different, but it's not shifting, you might want to just check in. What stories am I telling here? Because honestly, guys, our stories stop us constantly. If you have a story that you're always late, guess what? You're always late. If you have a story that you never have enough money, guess what? You never have enough money. If you have whatever the story is, rather than just be present with what is in that moment. And it's one of the tools that we use in Access in terms of destroying and uncreating your relationship with yourself, with anyone else, and with anything, so that you can actually be brand new every day. And so can the people around you, or the situations around you. So you just destroy and uncreate. And this is the way that I do it. I cover everything. I say I destroy and uncreate my relationship with everything and everyone from every lifetime. Right, wrong, good, bad, all 9, POD, POC, shorts, boys, and beyonds. Once or twice a day. That's what I will run, just so that it's fresh. I get to be who I be in that moment, and anybody around me gets to be who they be, or any situation, so that it's not the way it was yesterday. Whereas often we're operating from those stories. We're operating from who we were yesterday. And that was the other thing I was looking at when we were sitting on the highway, was in the past I would not have handled that well. I think I've said that already, but it would have been like, no, we're turning around, no, we're going home, this is stupid, this is wrong, this is, whatever. I would have had all these things, because my story about myself was, I don't handle plans changing well. I just don't handle that well. That was my story. So guess what I would have to do? Not handle plans changing well, until I got rid of that story, and I could be like, okay, so what would I like to be here? And again, the first, 15, 20, 30 minutes, I didn't do well. I was like, this is stupid, and all the things. And then it was like, okay, I've got some tools, now what? The other question that I utilized, and it was really funny, because I work with private clients, and just that morning, one of my private clients had asked we have a Facebook group just with, me and that person that I'm working with at the time. And so she had asked in our group about what she could do in a situation. Now, it wasn't the same situation as what I was in, obviously, but the question that I gave her was, what would it take for this to be more fun, phenomenal, and rewarding than I never imagined possible? Yeah. And so then I started using that one too, because it was like, what would it take? Like, what what actually would it take? Because I could choose for it not to be those things. I could choose for it not to be fun, not to be phenomenal, not to be rewarding. That's one choice. And of course I had a billion other choices, but I also could choose for it to be fun, phenomenal, and rewarding. Just by asking that question, it opens it up. So what would it take for this to be more fun, phenomenal, and rewarding than I never imagined possible? And then, the adventure of going and peeing in the bush. Yes, I did. I mean, I'm not opposed to that. If I have to pee and there's no other way, no other place to do it, I'm not one of those people who won't do that. I would rather pee my pants. No, I will go in a bush if I absolutely have to. And sitting 4 hours on a highway, yeah, I had to. And so did everybody else. It was really actually quite funny watching people, because you don't want anybody to know. But of course, everybody knows what you're going to do because it's a really long ditch. So, I mean, you have to walk out there. And so you could see people pretending to look at the trees and look at the grass. And it was so funny. And I did the same thing. I was just like, oh, I took my camera and I was outside taking pictures. But, meanwhile, walking to the bush to pee. And so it just became a fun game for hubby and I to be like, oh, look, they're off. They're going to go pee. And then these three boys, I don't know how old they would have been, maybe 8 and 6 and 5 or something like that. So obviously, their parents told them to, head that way and go to pee. They didn't go to the bush. They literally were like 2 steps from the bush and they dropped their pants and peed right there. So that was fun. We did have some laughs for sure. And then hubby turned on, he was watching a Netflix show that he downloaded. And I really didn't do, I had my computer there, I had my stuff. I wasn't in that space to do anything in that regards, and kind of had a little bit of a nap and, watched people. And then there was different people walking around kind of updating and chatting and, all those things. So there was all of that also. And then what was really interesting was yesterday, so today is Thursday when I'm recording this, so Tuesday was when that occurred, so yesterday, Wednesday, we went and did our hike at Maline Canyon. Oh my gosh, Maline, I'm not sure how to say it, but oh my gosh, so beautiful, you guys. If you ever have a chance to come to Jasper, I highly recommend it. I mean, the Rocky Mountains anywhere are beautiful, of course. Anyway, so we went and did that, and it was way shorter of a time than I actually thought it would take us. And so as we're driving back, I'm looking at the time, and we had dinner reservations for a place in Jasper that you need to have reservations at. It's that delicious. It's called Evil Dave's Grill, and their slogan is Wicked Food. I think that's brilliant. And so then we had hours between when we were finished at Maline Canyon to our dinner reservation. So I said to hubby, why don't we head out to Edith Cavell? It's about an hour out from Jasper, but we had the time. So we did that. So we still got to go out there. We still got to do that. If you're on my Facebook or Instagram, you might have seen I did a whole bunch of stories with different, shots and stuff. And the water here, you can't really see it right now. But in a lot of the lakes and stuff, it's quite a bluey green, and there's something in it. I don't remember what it is, but there is a reason for it to be that. So we found this spot. We had to kind of walk in and bushwhack to get to this one spot right beside the lake with Edith Cavell in the background. Oh my gosh, guys. That is so beautiful to me. Anyway, some more tools. What else did I use when I was sitting on the highway? So the presents, what's right about this I'm not getting. What would it take for this to be more fun, phenomenal, and rewarding than I never imagined possible? No judgment of me, total allowance of what I was choosing. The other thing that I have to just mention that I'm so grateful for is that hubby and I are really good, usually, not all the time, but usually, if one of us is in that space, the other one doesn't join them and doesn't add to it, so that we don't make the other person wrong for being there, but we also don't join them and make them right. So we just be while they have their whatever temper tantrum. And so at one point I just said, like, do we turn around? Like, what do we do? And he just said, you know what? I could sit here with you all day. So it's up to you. And I was like, damn it. Damn it. So that's when I went back to question of truth. And these are the questions that I use. Truth, would turning around right now create the future we desire or decay the future we desire? And it continued to be decay the future. So here's the thing. We sat there for, again, almost 4 hours. It could have at some point created the future. So it's not like I asked once and said, oh, that's it, because awareness is good for 10 seconds. So you want to be able to continue to ask questions, even if it was expansive or light, or you knew it was a yes at some point. There may be a time when that changes. So I probably asked it, I don't know, maybe every like 30 minutes or so. You know, it wasn't a constant like every 5 minutes, but I would say every 30 minutes or something like that, just in case it changed, because it can. And I wanted to know if it did, because I was pretty sure that was going to be the only option. And the other piece that I looked at when we were sitting there was that I actually knew something was going to occur before we left. And I didn't ask questions about it. Now, that doesn't mean I should have asked questions. I was wrong not to have asked questions. I'm not judging myself for it. Or that even if I would have asked questions, that we still wouldn't have left. So this is one thing that people often, well, I'm going to only speak for myself. This is one thing that I've done a lot, is where I decided that if I was aware, if I asked the right questions, if I was utilizing my awareness, then stuff like this wouldn't happen. And that's actually not true. That's not awareness. That's psychic telling. That's not awareness. And so it could have actually created greater for us to be there. I could have, but I was aware of the energy of it. And how it showed up was I was like pissy before we even left the house. And my conclusion about that was that I still had some things I had to do that I didn't get done. I still had all the things. This was our first time leaving little Toddy without her brother. And we have a guy, our neighbor, comes and moves in with us. Not with us, like into our house when we travel. And so I don't mean she was left alone for 3 days. We would never do that, of course. But we weren't there. And her brother, who's always been there when we've traveled, wasn't there. So it was her and our live-in kitty sitter were going to be there. So it was the first time doing that. And so I was being silly about that. And I had, all the things, and I had all the stories, and I had all the reasons for it, rather than actually, asking a question. And that's, again, not from the judgment, but what I was looking at was the question of, and you only want to use this question when you are not going to judge you, when you're not going to use it against you, is what 10 seconds of unconsciousness did I use to create this? Yeah. And so I knew as soon as we were stopped in traffic for like 10 minutes, I was like, oh, that's what was going on this morning. That's what I was aware of. Now, again, it doesn't mean that if I would have stopped and asked myself, okay, what am I aware of right now? That I would have got this huge download of, you're going to sit on the highway for 4 hours and it's going to be like this and like, no, that's not it at all. And so it was just this kind of space of like, oh yeah, I totally knew. And cool. And so what that does when you ask, so what 10 seconds of unconsciousness did I use to create this? What that does is next time that energy's there for me, I will likely be more aware of it. I will likely be more aware that I could ask a question. Doesn't mean I will, but I'll likely be more aware that I can ask a question in that moment. Or that I could, or that it would create more to, just by asking that. Because once we acknowledge that, oh shit, I knew, or I created that, or whatever, once we acknowledge what 10 seconds of unconsciousness we utilize, then it becomes more ease not to choose that in the future. But again, please guys, only use that question if it's not from a judgment of you. Because if you use that question, then you judge you for it, of like, oh, I'm so stupid, I shouldn't have done that. Like, you're not creating greater. You're not actually, there's no consciousness involved. You're just utilizing the tools against you. And there's so many different ways you could utilize the tools, my sweet friends. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Okay, so there you got it. There's some tools. When your plans change, there's some different ways you could change it if you would like. And yeah, so come and play with me somewhere in the world, my sweet friends. Now, right now, it's way more online. Unless you live in Canada, then come and play. You can get to me. But otherwise, most of it's online. We've got online foundations. We've got in-person foundations at my house in October of 2020, in Strathmore, Alberta in November of 2020, and who knows where else by the time you listen to this. But come and play. I would absolutely love to play with you somewhere, either online or on this beautiful planet of ours somewhere. So have an awesome rest of your week, and I look forward to chatting again next week.